Dead no more. Patient ZER0 Chapter 16 Reverse Patient 0. He's not a DC. He is immune to their bites, said Eli. What? How? I stuttered. Okay, bear with me doc, and don't get angry, said Eli. I used your research as an impetus for Tank's treatment. I used myself as a genetic template and culled an approximation of your formula from my blood. I wanted to ask your permission, but I wanted to prove myself as a doctor to you. First. Eli, you had nothing to prove to me. Hell, I didn't even know you were a doctor, I said. You knew of me as a doctor. You just didn't know it was me, he said. What the hell are you talking about? I said. I'm Dr. E.D. Jameson Gray, he said. The E.D. Gray who was honored along with me in absentia a while back. I asked. The one and the same. I was too ashamed to face you at that moment as the majority of my work was still theoretical. But Tank was a success, sort of, he explained. What do you mean, sort of? I asked. Well, he began, for one thing, he arrested. For another, when we revived him, the mitosis in his cells began to not only repair damaged brain tissue, but began to build new neurological pathways. His muscles began to become denser and stronger. His skin tougher and thicker. It's like he's a super soldier. Super soldier. I laughed. Are you kidding me? While he's not bulletproof or even bite-proof, it is harder for them to penetrate his skin. I know it sounds ludicrous, Doc, but hear me out, he said. Doc, Tank has a very rare blood type. He has the golden blood. What's golden blood? Asked Joshua. Golden blood is actually type Rh null blood. It is compatible with all blood types and is said to be as rare as gold, I said. Before the apocalypse, only 43 people in the entire world had it. And none of them were in the United States. How is this possible? If he were in the system, his blood type would have surely made him famous. I was able to conduct all of the experiments and treatments at the University of Georgia in secrecy, he said. I used your protoenzymes as a framework and extrapolated the general thesis for physiology in addition to neurology. The result is Tank. And what is Tank? I asked nervously. He doesn't get sick. He can press 10 times his body weight. Anything he sees, reads or hears he retains with 100% recall. He heals rapidly and he rarely tires, he explained. When this outbreak first began, my uncle and aunt tried to help some folks in trouble and they were both bit. When Tank tried to help them, he was bit as well. We didn't know nearly as much then as we do now, but his parents eventually turned. They attacked Jojo, but Tank was able to save him. He was bit again, but there were no ill effects. So, you believe your modified formula prevents the turn? I asked. No, it only worked on Tank. On anyone else, their system just burns through it. However, I did have one test subject who reanimated but had a complete system breakdown on a cellular level a few moments later, he said. Well, have you been working on this cure of yours? I asked. Sort of, he said. Well, you have or you haven't. I replied. Okay doc, let me be completely honest with you, he began. Hold on, I said. I called to T over the intercom. I wanted him here to hear this. A few moments later, T joined us. I filled him in on what I had heard so far. T just looked at me as to say, you need to come clean with him. Eli, I have something to tell you, I said. What's up, doc? He asked as he and T laughed. The outbreak is my fault. I administered my treatment to a patient and he was patient 0 for the outbreak. Because he was a family member, I released his remains for cremation and the cloud created drifted out over greater Atlanta, I confessed. From what you've told me about your suspicions, I can only gather that this cloud somehow affected a batch of flu vaccines distributed around the country. You had no way of knowing any of this would happen doc, he said. That's what I told him, said T. Wow, I had no idea, said Joshua. But I'm with Uncle T on this. But I doubt others would see it that way, I said. T. Eli was about to share some other information when I called you in, I said. Well, I was working for a guy after the outbreak. He wanted a cure. All of the test subjects he subjected to the treatment all turned. None of them had Rh null blood, so the treatment didn't work, he said. But then Tank said, too bad you can't use my blood to cure everyone. You would use him as a reverse patient 0. I asked. What the hell is a reverse patient 0? Asked T. Well, when you have an outbreak, it usually begins with one person. If that person is no longer available or viable, if you're lucky you might have a patient that is responding well to a course of treatment. You attempt to figure out what differences and commonalities they share to develop a broader line of treatment, I explained. Oh, said T as he made an airplane gesture over his head while he shook it. Find somebody that the cure worked on if you can't find the first sick person, said Eli. Damn, why don't you eggheads talk like that all the time? Asked T. Isn't Tank that big quiet dude we met when you came aboard, Eli? Hey Tank, can you come in here? I asked over the intercom. Tank hulked through the door as T looked up at him. T puffed up his chest and stood on his tiptoes. Oh, and T, he's only 12. I said smiling. Damn, what or hell are y'all feeding this boy? Asked T. MREs mostly, said Tank. Fruit cocktail is my favorite. You have a decent medical facility here? Asked Eli. Yes, it's nothing state of the art, but it'll do in a pinch, I said. Do you have a lab? Asked Eli. No, not yet, but I see where you're going, I said. Can Brian, Andre and Rodriguez meet me in the med bay? I said over the intercom. What's up, Doc? Asked Rodriguez as he, Brian, Andre, Joshua, Eli and T started laughing. I overheard Tank whisper, why is everyone laughing? As Joshua and T attempted to explain to him about that famous cartoon bunny. You might want to write this down, I said. We're going to need an electron microscope, a centrifuge, an incubator, and a refrigeration unit. Can you think of anything else, Eli? Yes, static curtains for a lab environment, he said. We'll also need petri dishes, and slides for the microscope and a bunch of suckers. Suckers? Asked Rodriguez. Suckers, said Eli. Trust me, when you try to draw blood from a 6 feet 2 inches 280 pounds. Man-child, you want to have suckers on hand. Doc, one more thing, if I can speak with you privately again. Can we have the room? I asked as everyone began to exit. Doc, the guy running the Papa's Pride, his name is Cisco. He is the stuff on the feet of the amoeba on Scum. He is the absolute worst and is evil. He's the one who took our friends, said Eli. One of our friends was his daughter, Cicely, who he had been molesting since she was 3. I swore to protect her but I wasn't strong enough. Tank was there, but there were too many of them. He's strong but he can still die. Cisco is also the man for whom I was trying to develop the cure. Okay, as soon as we get the materials for this lab, we'll pay him a visit, I said. He's taken in someone we kicked out and it's only a matter of time before our paths cross again. And Doc, began Eli. He burned my notes and took the only viable sample I had that might work. He's too afraid to try it on himself because of how the previous formulas turned out on the others, but he doesn't want to waste it if it will work. So he just keeps it, but I know it will work. If we can get it back, we can synthesize it and perhaps create a cure with Tank's blood. Well, you not being strong enough is one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, I said. Everyone here trains hard, and if you, Jojo and Tank want to stay, you'll have to train as well. What kind of training? He asked. Hand-to-hand, mixed martial arts, weapons and specialized skills, I said. I think you have the specialized skills part down, but the other two, we'll have to see. Eli jumped up and hugged me. Man, this is the coolest place ever, he said. In spite of all of his accomplishments, I keep forgetting that Eli is only a 17-year-old kid. If I'm not in the lab, I'll be training. Good to hear that you're dedicated, I said. You've already met one of your instructors, my son Joshua. Doc, I don't think he likes me very much, said Eli. Well, I think you impressed his girlfriend a little too much, I said as I laughed. Let's get you situated, get you fed and get you some rest. The next few days are going to be rough. The Raiders got the materials for the lab. Although he was still out of sorts because of his wife, Tim still pitched in to help us design our lab. Brian, Henry and Tank cleared the storage bay in record time. I think Brian is beginning to get into his training more. He's lost some weight and has even begun to challenge Henry to feats of strength in the gym. They were both blown away by what Tank was able to do. They piled all of the weights we had on one bar and he did 100 repetitions with it and it was almost 1.5 tons. This kid was absolutely amazing. But he was unfettered emotion and raw aggression. He needed focus and discipline. Jojo, however, surprised me as he had competed in martial arts tournaments. He was anxious to prove himself against Joshua. He learned quickly that tournament fighting and real fighting are two different animals completely. He challenged Joshua to a kumite, I think trying to impress some of the girls in their training class. Joshua knocked him on his ass a few times and it became evident who was the more skilled fighter. It was funny as he kept telling everyone that he was a black belt. The mission to secure Eli's friends and the package would be probably the toughest one we've had to date. I wanted a full complement of raiders whose ranks had swelled over the months to approximately 100 strong. They had platoon leaders and squad leaders and fire team leaders that all worked well together. I also wanted Tank and Jojo to come along. I wanted Eli to remain behind as he wasn't ready for something like this. This would also give him an opportunity to get the lab up and going as well. I really didn't want to, but I knew I was going to have a really difficult conversation with a certain someone. Look, I know after our last mission together, we swore we would never do anything like that again, I said. And I wouldn't blame you if you told me to kick rocks and kiss your ass. But we need you on this one. I know you don't usually go out into the field, but please. Leon looked at me and said, you had me at, look. Leon was perhaps the best commando I've ever met. He trained with Army Rangers, Navy SEALs, but he was always a hard-charging devil dog and Marine at heart and was one of the best in our recon platoon. Even though I taught him martial arts, his field of expertise is and always will be that of cover and concealment. His foray into the martial arts lead him to the way of the ninja. I wanted him to plan and lead this mission. He went over details of the Papa's Pride compound with Jojo, Eli and Tank. It seems that Tank, in addition to his physical gifts, has an eidetic memory, able to recall the most insignificant details with absolute accuracy. The three young men shared as much as they could about Cisco. He was a convicted rapist who escaped prison a few months after the world went to shit. He started gathering up like-minded people that he was able to dominate and control. He molested his daughter, murdered her mother and bullied and belittled those who attempted to stand up to him. Jojo described him as an accomplished street fighter. He fights dirty and usually tries to use a concealed weapon. He is brutal and unrelenting when he realizes he has the upper hand. Eli went on to describe him as a psychotic who uses violence and sex as an interchangeable release. He rules through fear and intimidation. He uses a gladiator arena of sorts with his men as entertainment. He wanted Tank and Jojo for his arena and Eli for his lab. Eli believes he wants to barter the cure to set up a new power structure with him at the top. And if he feels that the combatants are half-assing it, he releases DCs that they must fight unarmed. He is also a narcissist who demands devotion and attention. If you please him, he will reward you. But if you fail him. Tank was very brief in his information on Cisco. He's scared and that makes him mean, said Tank. But due to Tank's mental acumen, we were able to plot out maps of their compound, guard and security schedules and even bathroom habits. Leon, Gerald and I pored over the information to develop some tactics to approach the Papa's Pride compound. Dee was not happy with the decision to breach. She had other thoughts on the matter. I knew if we raised an army, that eventually we would invade someone, she said. Why is violence always the first choice? Violence isn't my first choice, I said. But the Papa's Pride has already held guns on us and levied threats. And besides, they have accepted that slimy weasel Cyrus into their midst. That alone should tell you everything you need to know about their character. But why can't we first attempt a diplomatic solution? Dee asked. Who do you suggest we send as an envoy? I countered. Me, Joshua, T. How about Andre? It has already been revealed to us that this guy fashions himself as some type of Roman emperor with gladiators to die at his whim. Do you honestly think whomever we send in under diplomacy is coming out alive? I don't know, she said. I just don't want to lose anyone else. Haven't we all lost enough? And after all of your information hinges on the ravings of a teenager. That teenager has almost as many degrees as I do and maybe even a higher IQ, I responded. You really should get to know someone before you cast aspersions. Fine, do whatever you like, you always do so anyways. She yelled. Dee, the days of me making unilateral decisions are over. I can't really get into the specifics of why this is truly necessary, but trust me that it is, I said. When we are successful, it could create a whole new world. Dee stormed off in a huff, as Leon, Gerald and I continued our strategy session. You know, said Leon, she wasn't completely off base. How much do you really know about this kid, Eli? I mean, how convenient that the guy we're going up against just happens to be the father of the girl he likes and works for. Sounds too melodramatic to me. You could be right, I said. Maybe we hold Andre and his squad in contingency. That way if things go south, we still have an ace up our sleeves. So you trust these guys, Marv? Asked Gerald. What does that nose of yours tell you? I asked Gerald. It just seems like we're not getting the entire story. There's a piece missing, but I don't know what it is yet, said Gerald. But I trust you in your ability to judge a person's character. I think the longer we live in this new world, the more likely that I lose that ability to know what a person's character is, I responded. But for right now, I trust him. Tank, Joshua, Jojo and I set out in a jeep for the Papa's compound. The radio relays were working and we had almost an entire platoon following at a safe distance in an APC armored personnel carrier. We had Andre and his squad at the ready following them in the bus. The rest of the raiders were split into teams of 3 and deposited into the 3 locations of the bunker, the plant and the armory. Leon took an electric bike, which was whisper quiet, and went in through a gap in their security. I went over the plan again and again until I was sure Jojo understood. Tank was able to repeat the plan word for word, but I worried if he'd be able to improvise if things skewed from the plan. Sometimes when I look at Tank, I see the joy of a child in others, I see a soullessness that I've only ever seen in Marines who knew they were about to die or kill. I looked over at Joshua. If he was nervous, he hid it well, even from me. He worked with Jojo the entire time we drove to the compound. The compound was actually a gated community that Cisco and his pride took over. Cisco had escaped from prison about 3 or 4 months after the world went to hell. He rounded up like-minded, but weaker-willed people to form his pride. Murderers, rapists, drug dealers and thieves made up his compatriots. His arena was in the middle of the community, which was actually a park. He gathered everyone to watch the spectacle every Friday night. Tonight was Friday. While the 4 of us went in through the front gate, Leon was in through one of the side streets and over their wall. We parked the jeep and made our way through to the park. There he was, Cisco, holding court. They were hanging on his every word. He wasn't a big man. He stood approximately 5 inches, 11, and maybe 160 pounds. Well, said Cisco with a heavy southern accent. It looks like our guests have finally arrived.